Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the General Eclectic Podcast with Rod Dreher. I'm your host, Kale Zelden, and we are excited for episode 2 of the General Eclectic. Rod, how you doing?
I'm doing well as anybody could be doing in these dark days of the bleak midwinter. I'm really glad, though, Kale, that we finally got this podcast going, and thanks to your hard work. Maybe we should tell our listeners a little bit about what they can expect if they keep coming back to us week after week.
Yeah, for sure. So, many of you know Rod from his 3 New York Times best-selling books, The Little Way of Ruthie Lemming, The Benedict Option, and, of course, his latest, Live Not by Lies. Also, of course, Rod is incredibly prolific on The American Conservative, his blog there. And so you probably know Rod. You don't know me. I'm a Southerner in exile up here in Rhode Island. I teach literature to high school students, and I raised my family up here, and been friends and correspondence with Rod for years. Fortunately, he lives in my hometown, so when I get to go home to see my folks, we get together and hit Ruth's Chris when we can. When
we can. And you are a Catholic, and you identify
correct.
yourself as an Orthodox, small O Orthodox Catholic, meaning you really believe this stuff.
That's right.
Yeah,
and one of those guys. Yeah,
and I'm of course an Eastern Orthodox Christian, but I think one thing that we hope to do here with this podcast is to look at the world and analyze the world through the eyes of 2 fallible Christian men who are just trying to make sense of it and make sense of what it makes to live a good life. We're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about religion and culture, but also we might talk about food and literature. That's why we call it the General Eclectic, because that's the kind of guys we are.
And, and to that point, I think the other part of eclectic is that you and I like, something like, the Rolling Stones' Sticky Fingers as much as a piece from Mozart. We like the high and the low, and we have fairly eclectic tastes. So anyway, that's what we hope to be doing here. If you recall in episode 1, Rod, we opened it up. We were filming it on the night of the Georgia Senate runoff, and we kind of made maybe I made the joke. I don't know that, we tend not to get too hung up on electoral politics, but given what has happened since almost a week ago, on Wednesday, at the Capitol, I do think it's probably appropriate that we sort of talk a little bit about this and just sort of what's going on, try to make sense out of what, at least from my vantage point, seems, everything's crazy right now.
Oh, look, it's what happened on January the 6th. I think it's going to be a day remembered a lot like 9/11. I mean, obviously what happened on 9/11 was vastly worse, but I think it is going to be one of those mileposts in American history beyond which everything was different. I can remember watching the TV with my kids, or rather I was sitting here at home on blogging when somebody, it might have been you, texted me and said, turn on the TV. They're storming the Capitol. And my wife and I got our kids in to watch this. We were streaming it on television. And I said, kids, this is going to be something you guys are going to be talking about for the rest of your life. This is big history right here. And I think what is the main lessons, again, just a week later, the main lessons are this can happen here in America. I quoted in Live Not by Lies Alexander Solzhenitsyn saying that, in a 1980s edition of Gulag Archipelago, that one of the mistakes that people make is thinking that what happened in Russia couldn't happen in their country.
Right.
He said, in fact, what happened here could happen anywhere in the world. Well, again, I don't want to overstate things. This is not the Gulag, but it is one of those things that was so shocking that we couldn't have really imagined it prior to it happening. I mean, I still, my mind reels to think about there was a mob in there chanting, "Hang Mike Pence."
Right. Right. And I had a similar experience. I'm an hour ahead of you. And so I sort of saw the stuff going down. And I came home, and I never turn on the TV. I mean, I watch live football. That's about what I do on TV. And, I sort of this moment where, my kids are younger than yours, and they kind of came on in like, what's Daddy watching TV for? And, in the middle of the week. And I said, guys, you probably should take a look at this. And we had the same kind of conversation, that this is like, you're going to remember this. And my littlest one, she's 9, and she's like, Daddy, is this bad? And you sort of have that knee jerk reaction as a dad. You're like, oh, honey, no, it's going to be okay. And I didn't sort of automatically say it was going to be okay, because didn't know what the heck was going on, and so I was like, well, and at that moment, we're not talking about Santa Claus here. Well, honey, it's not good,
right?
It's not good.
Right. And what's interesting to me, as somebody who wrote Live Not by Lies about the coming of soft totalitarianism, all the things that I have paid attention to rising on the left out of this paranoid ideology called critical race theory and, more broadly speaking, identity politics, that's still true. But I wish I had paid more attention to the parallel radicalism or radicalization on the right through QAnon and the MAGA conspiracies. I mean, that's something I have to own, and I've written about it on my blog about how I knew that was out there, but I never imagined it was so powerful that they would be able to do something like what they did once they were activated by President Trump's speech.
Yeah, I'll have to do a little bit admitting on that front too. I knew a little bit about QAnon, but it was so kind of in my frame, it was just kind of out there, and I just didn't pay too much attention to it. And instead, was sort of paying attention to sort of other versions of what you and I have been sort of chewing on about, kind of pseudo-realities.
Yeah.
And the pseudo-realities have sort of broken through the veil, so to speak. And I think, one of my favorite quotations, and I'm going to mangle it right now, but it's from Mike Tyson, and he said something to the effect of, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And there's great wisdom in that quotation. And, and so, I think all of us, again, I wasn't there, you weren't there, neither of us are Trump guys. But I think all of us were punched in the face a little bit by that. Mm-hmm. I know, I did not think it was I did not think it was going to happen. I really didn't.
Well, here's what's interesting about the pseudo-reality. I've been writing for a while, again, in my book and in my blog, about how this ideology from the left, critical race theory, critical theory, let's just put it broadly to include identity politics,
right.
How one of the core aspects of this is it's the idea that words create reality. Mm-hmm. And so these people believe that, for example, you can create men or women depending on words.
Right.
And it's something that most people, most ordinary, most normies don't take seriously, because it's something that previously had been just talked about, in the English department or critical studies faculties. Well, now it's gone totally mainstream, and we have been criticized. People like me and you on the right have been criticizing this sort of thing as being not connected to any kind of reality. Now we see the QAnon people have come and acting on a pseudo-reality. They ended up doing something truly crazy. And I think about this Ashley Babbitt, the woman, the MAGA martyr who was shot. Yeah. I went back
and hold on. Before people accuse Rod of calling this woman a martyr, this is what other folks are calling her.
Sure.
The unreal right. Okay, just want to make sure.
No, exactly. No, the woman who's been made a martyr.
Thank you.
She was a woman shot trying to go through. She was at the head of a mob trying to break through a door leading to the speaker's lobby just behind the House of Representatives chamber. There were police behind that door, on the other side of the door, with weapons drawn, telling them to stop. The mob did not stop. They smashed the window. Ashley Babbitt, we've seen this on video, she was the first one through the hole in the window, and she was shot dead. Yeah. Now, I have to say, going back to look at her background, she was an Obama voter who got radicalized online with QAnon. And I think, honest to God, that she did not realize until the moment the bullet hit her that she was living in the real world. It was all, I think, part of a cosplay,
Right. No, I think that's exactly right. I amongst my friend group and you and several others, we often talk about LARPing, right? Live action role playing, and that, we see so much LARPing and I guess it's live action role playing mediated through social media, right? There's lots of, we joke about keyboard warriors, and we joke about, keyboard tough guys, and we see these guys on the right, we see these guys on the left, and fine, right? But what she's literally dressed up, and this woman is an Air Force veteran. She supported Obama, and sort of gradually sort of spins into this apparently deeply attractive pseudo-reality, like this sort of this black hole of QAnon, this black hole of conspiracy thinking, and it's unhinged. And clearly she's not alone. I mean, I think that's what I'm struck by and take great pause.
Oh, Kale, over the past few days since all this happened, I've been hearing from readers who say it's tearing my family apart. Right. One man wrote and said he's losing his wife to this. She's gone down this hole, and that he and their teenage children are watching this happen, and they can't reach her. And he's considered by his wife and her broader family to be the bad guy because he won't do the manly thing and stand up for the president. I got a heartbreaking email from someone who wrote to say that one of his best friends is going, and his family are going down this path right now. And he said these are people who left their mega church because it was too moralistic therapeutic deism, too wishy-washy. They went to a smaller church so they could get a thicker brand of Christianity. Well, now they've turned their hearts and minds over to QAnon, and it's destroying them emotionally and mentally. My friend Eric Metaxas, a guy I've known since 1998, one of the sweetest men, one of the most intelligent Christian men, he's gone down this same path. So it's not LARPing. It's not just people we can. Yeah, you see, it's really affecting families and lives and friendships.
Yeah. No, I think that's right, and it's and there doesn't seem to be a kill switch. Sorry to use the phrase. There doesn't seem to be, okay, we're done now. That this is gonna, and it sucks in. And what I've found too fascinating is that all available phenomena can get repurposed and work toward proving the thesis, even when the evidence is contrary to the thesis. It's a remarkable mental elasticity or something. I don't know. I don't.
Well, yeah. I mean, the people now, it's common on the right to hear, well, this was really Antifa that did this. It wasn't us. We won't do these things. And I got to say, even after we saw what happened, I said, well, this will finally break the spell, right? That it's right there on video what happened. Nope. It is, again, the pseudo-reality. We create our own realities. And I think that this is so dangerous for this country because, again, going back to critical race theory, there's a really good piece in First Things magazine right now by Carl Trueman, a Protestant theologian. He talks about Christianity and critical race theory. And in the piece, he mentions that one of the aspects of critical theory of all kinds is that it is unfalsifiable, that if you question anything about it, any of its claims, that just goes to show how blinded you are. Similarly about QAnon, you can't falsify it. If you point to actual facts that contradict the narrative, that just shows how blind you are, and you're in on the conspiracy too.
That's exactly right. It's it's a Kafka trap, right? So that any kind of pushback. Look, this is I don't want to get too far into this right now, but this is the Robin DiAngelo trap, right? I mean, with white fragility, that if you dare question sort of the claims, then that's further evidence of your own complicity. It's further evidence of your own unacknowledged participation in the structures of white supremacy, et cetera, right? And there's no pushback on it. These are a priori assumptions you cannot, and if you try to question them, then like, well, what's wrong with you? And what is, to me, I was in graduate school in the mid-90s, and this was at the sort of the full, this was before, actually, this is a funny thing, right? I was a first-year graduate student the year that Sokol print got into sort of the original Sokol hoax.
You have to explain that
into the journal.
briefly.
Right. So I'm trying to remember the details, but Sokol, I think, was a physicist, but was sort of shocked at what he was seeing going on with his colleagues in the humanities, and he basically made up a paper, using the jargon, and got it. Discourses, is that the name?
Something he got it. It was complete nonsense, but it sounded like it was real because he had mastered the jargon.
Right. And so anyway, I had come out of a sort of an old school, new critical, read the text. What does the text say? And there's all kinds of sort of false caricatures of that. So anyway, I went into graduate school, of course, as a genuine lover of literature and poetry. I really was animated by this. Well, I quickly realized that it was a sort of a pit of resentment. So I had kind of gotten this early taste of it, and then it had kind of waned a little bit. It kind of gone somewhat underground. Well, now it is sort of percolated into all these other various places. Now, what I find fascinating, I'm interested to read this Truman piece, that that there are many Christians who are sort of playing the white fragility game with critical race theory. Oh, well, if especially I see this in evangelical circles, you just don't want to acknowledge your own racism, and you're caught up in sort of what I guess me as a Catholic would call the sort of an Americanist heresy, which is, again, I partly agree. This notion of sort of Americanism as a sort of a version of a false gospel, but amongst the evangelicals, there's this sort of strange play to pretend it's not a problem. And I'm talking about amongst, Christian evangelicals. I'll be very interested to see how this thing shakes out.
Yeah, what we should do, this is only our second podcast, but I got an email or a comment, I guess it was, on my blog when I advertised this podcast. Someone said, "Will you have guests on?" I said, "Well, absolutely we will once we figure out what we're doing." Yeah. But let's have Carl Truman on to talk about this sort of thing, because I think it would be really good. But we were talking about pseudo-reality, but reality itself is about to hit a lot of these people square in the face when they.
So I was just going to say, I'm sorry. So you in the aftermath, you of course invoked the Reichstag Fire. And all the normal people who like to hate on Rod Dreher online were like, "Oh, there goes Rod again," going crazy about about the parallels. But it's fascinating. In the wake of that, I got tons of messages from friends who sort of get annoyed by you sometimes, and they're like, "Nope, Rod's right. People are crazy if they don't think this is the Reichstag Fire." So why don't you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, well, the Reichstag Fire was something that happened in 1933, not long after Adolf Hitler came to power as the chancellor, democratically elected. There was a fire. Someone set a fire in the German parliament, the Reichstag, and it was it was blamed on a Dutch communist named Marinus van der Lubbe. But Hitler, we don't know if the communists really did like this or the Nazis did it, but whatever, Hitler took advantage of the crisis. He said, "See, this is how much danger the Reich is in. We need to suspend civil liberties," and so on and so forth. And that was a milestone. The Reichstag Fire was a milestone in the consolidation of Nazi power. I brought it up here because I think what's happened today, what happened on January 6th, it was clear who did it. It was just not like a false flag operation. It happened. Yeah. But I think that I don't think I know that this will be used by people on the left, and not just activists, but people within corporations, within what the neo-reactionaries call the cathedral. Meaning the establishment, the media, universities, corporations, and within government institutions.
And we're seeing it.
They're going to use this to come down hard, not just on people who did this, and they ought to be come down hard on, but on everybody on the right. And I think it's just a matter of time. When people have said to me they don't understand how the so-called social credit system, the Chinese social credit system, can come here. Well, guess what, friends? We're about to see it happen. We're already seeing it with major corporations cutting these people off from access to social media. That's going to go even deeper. What happens when banks start cutting off credit and accounts to anybody suspected in any way of sympathizing with MAGA, QAnon, and so forth. There's a great piece by Nicholas Grossman that appeared on Arc Digital. And he's a professor who's taught about this stuff. And he said, it's about to get very real for you. You all have awakened the deep state. What you thought was a deep state before, that's just conspiracy theory. The deep state is the mechanism of government that was created, in with reference to what's happening now, was created and weaponized to fight Al-Qaeda. Now it's going to be turned on the domestic right, and because of the six.
Yeah, so on that point, you have talked, really for the last 2.5 to 3 years, you've really been talking about this soft totalitarianism, the social credit system, that this is all coming. Well, let me ask you this. We know that people don't want to hear this, but what form will that take? How will those forces be activated and manipulated and captured against Americans?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen at the level of the state, of the government. I think that the Democrats are understandably in no mood to compromise with the Republicans over this. I mean, I get that, and I think that anger will last a while, but that's not the thing I'm mostly worried about. I mean, Joe Biden, by the way, has talked about how he's going to have new domestic terrorism legislation. That could be something very much to worry about. I think, though, that the way that it's going to affect us most, and it's going to come down on people like you and me who weren't Trumpers, who have nothing to do with QAnon, but I think it's going to be very crude, is there's going to be a widespread attempt to scapegoat all of us, to find out, use social media and other forms of being able to track us, what we have said, who we're hanging out with, who we've contributed to, because all the information that's in public, and that will be blown up, and there will be people trying to get us fired. Now, I don't think I have to worry about that because I work for the American Conservative, but a lot of people will have to worry about it. And I'll give you an example. There are people at the New York Times. You remember what happened to Barry Weiss? She resigned.
Yeah,
but there were other people fired there over having something as benign as having commissioned an op-ed from Senator Tom Cotton, right? But what's interesting about that is the staffers were fired because of an employee rebellion within. Progressives within the organization demanded that they be fired. So what happens at companies that aren't political, aren't involved in the media at all, but a group of progressive employees decides that Joe Bob here had a Trump sign out front. Yeah. We don't feel safe. This is not a safe space, and so on and so forth. We live in an at-will employment world, Kale, and they can fire people. What's his name? Senator Josh Hawley learned in a very hard way the other day when he lost his book deal how this sort of thing works.
Simon & Schuster, right? Yeah.
Right. Josh Hawley, as listeners may recall, he was the one who kept the election contention thing alive because he was the first senator to come out and say, no, I'm going to contest the election. Right. So he was one of the, some have called him an instigator of all this. It might not have happened had he not insisted on having this vote. Anyway, he's been a really great critic of big tech, and he had a book deal to write a book on the tyranny of big tech with Simon & Schuster. After last Wednesday, Simon & Schuster decided that he was too radioactive, and they were going to cancel his book deal, which they did. Now, he came out and issued a statement calling it, quote, Orwellian, and said that, see you in court, this is a violation of the First Amendment. He's a lawyer. He's a smart guy. It's not going to work. This is not Orwellian. I've written 5 books. They always have a clause in the contract that allows them to cancel the book for any reason. And while I wish they hadn't canceled the book, they're completely within their rights. I know people now, Kale, who are involved in the broader conservative world, in conservative publishing, in activism and stuff, who are terrified of this sort of this blacklisting that's coming. I even heard today from a friend who works on the Democratic side who lost his job today because
just today,
and I can't say too much about it because he's still reeling, but he's very much on the left. But he questioned whether or not we ought to be rushing into potential violations of civil liberties in an effort to get at the evildoers.
Well, okay, right. So when the word terrorism is invoked, which I think is not what this is. I think it's more of an insurrection, but I don't want to get too caught up in word games here. But you and I both know that the invocation of the word terrorism triggers very specific mechanisms of the government. Mm-hmm. And, this is Patriot Act 2.0, but rather than a foreign enemy, right, employed by the second Bush administration to fight Al-Qaeda, ostensibly, this is now an attempt, it seems to me, my lay opinion, is an attempt to wage a similar type warfare against American citizenry.
Right.
And whatever you think of Trump, and you're clearly on record about what you think of Trump, and you've called for his impeachment. I don't think I agree with that, but that's neither here nor there. Not because I don't think what he did was wrong. Of course, right. I think he did something wrong, but I'm very, very concerned about the fragility. I use that word without irony. I'm very concerned about the fragility of the American scene right now. And I'm deeply concerned about the word reckoning and accountability. Those are two words that have meanings too. Yeah. But at any rate, so anyway, my question to you about the we still have 48% of the people who came out to vote in record numbers last month or in November, voted for Trump. Now, even those people who watched on the TV, they're Trump, so they're Trump voters, so they're watching their Fox News or their ONN or mm-hmm. whatever that online network is called, and a lot of them were horrified by it too. Mm-hmm. But are we just going to say, well, sorry, 75 million of you voted for Orange Hitler, and you're done? Well, no, I'm genuinely asking.
I think. Here, let's talk about the impeachment thing, because I didn't know where you stood on it, but I think it's important here. The reason I'm for impeaching him again is because I think what happened on that Wednesday was so egregious that it cannot go unpunished by the Congress. And that doesn't mean that everybody who voted for Trump, it's not like we're overturning the election. He's going out anyway. Yeah, but yeah. I feel like such a line was crossed, and it has to be. I want to see Congress do this. I want to see Republicans take a stand against him like that and make it where he can't run for office again. He's so reckless. And I'm somebody who, I never liked the guy, but I was not a never Trumper because I knew he came out of a situation. Our culture produced him, right?
Okay. That is a really good point, and I feel like that is the point that's going to get lost in all of this shuffle. Right. That Trump becomes this, this grand sort of magic figure that has taken a basically sane country and turned it into a basically insane country, and he's responsible for a lot of things. That speech he gave that morning was deeply, deeply irresponsible. But Trump did not cause, how do I say this? Trump did not create the craziness we find ourselves in.
No, I think he exacerbated it and exploited it. But, as I've been saying for 4 years, Trump came from somewhere. Yeah. Right? And, but I think that we have let's pull some Rene Girard out of the ether. I think we have an opportunity on the right to use Trump as a scapegoat in the Girardian sense. I mean, I think he's guilty of doing or participating in something incredibly reckless. But if the right, broadly speaking, can pin this on him, even though it is not just him, if we can pin it on him, we might stand a chance of recovering ourselves and living on to fight, because all the crazy things that the left was planning to do before January 6th, they're still going to do. And not only are they going to do it, but it has just been put on a rocket ship, right? And so we cannot have the right, I say this as a conservative, we can't have the right so tied still to Donald Trump. And this is what drives me nuts about.
Okay, but
go ahead. Yeah. So
is that going to sufficiently unhinge Trump from the sort of the larger, broad-based conservative ethos and project in America? No. I mean, is that really going to do it? I don't buy it. I think that it's going to get pinned on conservatives one way or the other.
I know. I think you're right. But if we can't at least formally repudiate this guy, I mean, it makes it even harder. And I mean, look, I published a piece the other day called "Who is the Martin Luther King of the Deplorables?" Right? Good. Because I was thinking about what would have happened, a thought experiment, if in 1957, the civil rights movement leaders had been frustrated with the lack of progress toward their goals. They had held a march on Washington, and a mob of them had broken into the Capitol and was running around screaming, "Hang Richard Nixon." It was the vice president of Eisenhower. What would that have done to the civil rights movement? I mean, this country would have gone berserk. It would have set it back so far. Well, that didn't happen, obviously, but
it could have.
It could have. But what King did,
fortunately, it didn't. Right?
What Martin Luther King did and the civil rights leadership did was they knew that power was massive against them. And they worked out the strategy of nonviolence and figured out a way to use that to win the sympathies of most Americans. Now, if we had something like that on the right for the deplorables, for the people who've been shot, who've lost their jobs, who've lost their livelihoods, et cetera, if we had moral leadership that was was strategic, was intelligent, was disciplined, and was willing to use those same sort of tactics, who knows how far we could have gone. Instead, we got Donald Trump, and now we've got the insurrection at the Capitol, and that is going to trigger not only the agencies of the state, like FBI and so forth, but all of the corporations are going to use it to put the squeeze on everybody on the right.
Right, and that is, I think, something that several sort of right conservative commentators have made that I think is correct. That what the MAGA folks, the MAGA rioters don't understand is what did they actually hope to accomplish? Right? I mean, literally. I mean,
no.
What did they hope they could put Mike Pence in zip ties, and then what? Seriously, what's next? What's your next move? Right? And so, but the left, people have been comparing, the BLM protests that turned into riots and the MAGA protests that turned into riots, and there's this sort of equivalency game going on. But you don't see, the mayors of American cities. There's not going to be the equivalent, a Black Lives Matter plaza in Washington D.C. There's not going to be a MAGA plaza in Washington D.C.
No,
because all the things are lined up against it anyway.
Well, yeah, this is one of the things that's so stupid and self-defeating about our own side here is we don't have any real appreciation of how power works. And, we can come out and say, but they did, but what about when they did this thing? And yeah, you know what? You're right. They did do terrible things, but they have the media on their side. They have the institutions on their side. And as unjust as it might be, this is the world we live in, and we have to work with that. And if we don't work within that reality, if we silo ourselves into our own social media world and only talk about what about, we're going to get our butts kicked. And that's about to happen now because we will have led ourselves and are allowed ourselves to be led into a trap.
Okay. The last thing I'll say about this, just to throw it out there, is that I don't know what saves us from a kind of Hatfield and McCoy's situation.
Right.
What is that thing that's going to sort of be bigger than, the activated left and the activated loony left and the activated loony right. I mean, and folks like me and you, I'm trying to find some sort of reasonable ground with which to go about my business and raise my family and fill my days and my hours, right? But I don't know. I feel like the Terra Firma is being taken out. There's nowhere to stand. That there's no base. I can remember when we were little, we would play chase, right? And you had to get to base. So like, I don't know where base is.
Right. It's very fluid right now. And one of the most horrifying things I saw the other night was a teenage girl. I think she's an adult, but still a teenager, outed her mother and uncle and all of them on social media as being, at the march, because she's mad at them because she's identified as a lesbian and BLM and blah, blah, blah. She did this Pavlik Morozov thing. He's the little Russian kid who was became a hero in Soviet mythology because he outed his mother and father to the government because they were anti-communist. Anyway, she did this on social media, and her parents or her mother, whatever, they shouldn't have been there. They shouldn't have done what they did. But my God, when you have family members turning on family members for political reasons and putting their lives at risk to punish them for being on the wrong side politically, that's a terrible thing in this country. I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. I don't think there will be anything that saves us from Hatfield and McCoy's. I think what's going to happen in order to short-circuit potential for violence, that's why we're going to see a social credit system, and most people will be happy for it. And what a social credit system would do would be to take the most extreme people and economically marginalize them, paralyze them to compel obedience. And I don't want this to happen, but I think that it's going to happen because I can't see any other way of stopping the spiral of hatred and mutual recrimination.
All right, one last question before we get into the fun part of the cast, and we're being mindful of time here, people. 45-minute hard stop. I'm always interested in what's going on when you're not following the ball, right? And when you coach, like I've coached basketball and soccer and some other things, and what you're trying to get your athletes to do is to do things when they're not around the ball, right? And so when you're learning how to coach, you have to not follow the ball. You have to sort of look at what else is going on the peripheries, what kind of movement is going on, because all eyes are focused on the ball. And fine. I mean, the ball right now is Capitol Hill. The ball right now is still Trump. Gosh, the ball has been Trump for 4.5, 5 years. We can't think of and talk about anything else. What's going on when we're not paying attention, either in this country or around the world? I mean, what are the Russians up to? What are the
Chinese up to?
What are the communist Chinese up to? I mean, that's what I want to know. What are the Iranians up to?
Yeah, I got a text from a friend of mine in Italy when all this was going down last week, and he said that it just makes him so sad because he loves this country, but he said now everybody around the world sees how weak you are and how unstable you are.
Yeah, if I'm a bad faith actor in a far-flung country from America, I'm looking at this is the opportunity I've been waiting for decades for. I can now act. Because, I mean, seriously, imagine if some sort of military event happens today, right now, as we speak. This country's not in a position to do anything.
Of course not.
Absolutely not.
If China wants to grab any of those little islands that are disputed, it's going to be able to do it. And I hope it doesn't do it. I hope it has enough sense. But, yeah, and it's going to be a while before we restore any that sort of confidence and stability, because Biden, his first weeks and months of his administration are going to be taken up with the fallout of January 6th. No doubt about it.
All right, so when I twisted your arm over the course of a year, I promised that we would not turn this into the Black Pill podcast. So what do you see? So we're in the middle of all this. It's crazy. Nobody can make sense out of anything. People are angry. Tempers are hot. All that. Where do you find hope? What do you do to find hope in this crazy moment?
Kale, I drink. No, I have
bottoms up.
Yeah, no, I've actually started a Substack, roddreher.substack.com newsletter, a daily newsletter where I try to focus on reasons to hope. And it's a spiritual discipline for me, because when I write my blog, I mean, there's no shortage of reasons not to hope. But what I'm finding is not only hope in the places that I would have gone before, which is to look for beauty, look for examples of goodness, and to realize that the world is as what Russell Kirk said, the world is sunlight despite its vices, sunlit despite its vices. I wrote this out to my readers last night, that the exposure of evil, of real spiritual evil, as I think we've seen happen this week, but it always fills me with a sense of hope in this one, in a narrow but profound way, in that it makes me realize that stakes are real. We're not just LARPing, that there is a such thing as evil and there is a such thing as good. And our responsibility is, in this time, if you are a good man or a good woman, our responsibility is to heroic sanctity. In this time. And that is a sense of hope. If you read Michel Houellebecq's novels, which I hope we can talk about that in a future podcast, he's describing a world without hope, a world in which all meaning is gone, all that's left is drinking and having sex and shopping. And this is why he posits Islam as a possible future for Europe, because at least they stand for something.
Right, it's a kind of antidote to the nothing.
Right, and I think that there is hope in the meaning that has been revealed by this horrible event last week. We know that we're living in meaningful, tumultuous times, and I think it is a call to Christians and to all good men and women to stand up and to know who you are.
Yeah, and it seems, when I asked the question earlier, like, what were you planning on doing? Like, what was this for? And I don't think that the founding of this country was done in order to give meaning to people. And I fear that we've slouched into looking at the nation as the thing which gives us meaning.
Yeah.
And I don't think that somebody like John Adams or an Alexander Hamilton or a George Washington or a Thomas Jefferson would have looked to the country that they were trying to found as the thing by which they would derive personal meaning. And as the rest of those, they would look at other things, right? For the things that would give their lives shape and meaning. And I guess I'm kind of Jordan Petersonian on this sort of point, that we have spent too much time pursuing happiness and not enough time pursuing meaning, not enough time taking up responsibility. So I think that for me, when I hear you talk about the recognition of the reality of evil, it's that we've got some work to do, right? That it's not about Medicare for all. It's not about raising the minimum wage. Those are fine things to talk about and argue about and hope for, but that's not really what gives your life meaning. And neither is sort of infinite amount of supply of Netflix and Prozac. That's not where meaning comes from either. Meaning, I think, comes from struggle. Taking up your responsibility and struggling. We don't see that.
And Pope Benedict XVI said in this now famous 1969 speech he gave on the radio, talking about the Church of the Future, when he was just Father Ratzinger, and he said that talking about what the Church is going to have to suffer, it's going to have all its power, its money, all that stripped away, all its status stripped away. He said that people in the future will not be drawn to a church that is political on the left or the right, whether you're a MAGA Jericho March person or a social gospel person.
Totally.
People need an encounter with the living Jesus Christ. And I think that is a tremendous opportunity for us now, but we have to have all our illusions stripped away from us, Kale. And
our illusions and our idols.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that fills me with anxiety about what's ahead is, in Europe between the wars, many people lost their faith in religion and in the old ways, but something had to fill that God-shaped hole in their hearts and their moral imaginations. It became ideology. It became the ideology of National Socialism or communism, these false religions, these political religions. I think that it is not just possible, but likely that we will go there in this country. Ross Douthat said back in 2005, he said, if you don't like the religious right, wait till you see the post-religious right.
I literally was thinking about that this morning. I even re-Googled the article and I reread it. It's funny you bring it up because that's right, because the irreligious right is coming, because, and that's going to be seen. Anyway, I want to just quickly, before I've got 30 seconds here to jump in. I I find hope in this moment, is I like to read old books, and I love looking at old books, and I'm recognizing again and again that there's nothing new, right? That the fights that we have now were the fights they had back in the day, different versions, different clothing, and all of that. But there really is nothing new under the sun, and we are kind of stuck here on the one hand with our human nature, but there are profound answers to abiding in the difficulties that we have and the patterns that we have been giving. And I really wanted to talk about Ignatius Riley and his love of Boethius. I mean, I really wanted to get exactly
our friend Ignatius.
So
next week.
Yeah, next week. All right. So everyone, thank you so much for joining me and Rod on the General Eclectic Podcast. Please go check out Rod at his blog at The American Conservative, his Substack. You can see us on Twitter at Rod Dreher, and I'm at Kale Zelden. We hope to, we will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank
Rod?
you. And don't get nothing on you.
All right, Bubba.